In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we have a new lesson for second secondary grade, first semester, English subject, Unit 4, Listening and Grammar, Megago 3. Today we will listen and discuss types of TV programs. Practice direct and indirect objects. Learn how to use to and for before the indirect object articles. What kind of television programs do you like to watch? What kind of television programs? For example, do you like the action, the comedy, or the quiz programs, like Who Can Be the Millionaire, or you like cooking shows? What kind of television programs do you like, or do you like to watch? Okay, give some examples. Examples of programs of TV or television programs. Okay, what kind of programs do you dislike? For example, you may say, I dislike the comedy programs, or I dislike the medical programs. Why do you dislike it? Tell me your reason why you dislike this kind of programs. Now we will listen and discuss.
Jeopardy! Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. Jeopardy is a unique American quiz show that features trivia in history, literature, the arts, culture, science, sports, geography, wordplay, and more. The show is famous for its unusual answer and question format, which requires contestants to phrase their responses in question form, having been presented with clues. The first episode of the show was aired on March 30th, 1964, and went through different stages as a daytime series or a nighttime show. On September 10th, 1984, Jeopardy returned as a daily series with Alex Trebek as host and has been on ever since.
Hoy, Monday, 9 a.m. This Mexican morning show, recorded live in front of an audience, is broadcast in Mexico, the United States, Central and South America, and parts of Europe. A team of hosts offer family-oriented entertainment. On today's program, the guest chef cooks up some Peruvian shrimp, and a prosperous businessman gives advice to members of the audience.
CSI, Crime Scene Investigation. Thursday, 9 p.m. CSI is an American crime drama about a team of forensic scientists who investigate mysterious and unusual deaths. In tonight's episode, Grissom, Stokes, and Brown take on the puzzling case of a jogger killed in a park. At first, the team suspects it is a strange accident, but they eventually discover that someone has been plotting a series of disturbing crimes.
Okay, now we will have comprehension questions. Which program is a quiz show? We have three kinds of programs. We have three programs. Which program is a quiz show? It is Jeopardy. Okay. Which program is good for family viewing? It is Hoy. The third one, or the third question, which program is from the US? We still have CSI. Now we will study some new vocabularies. Air means to transmit to an audience by radio or television station. Not just an audience, to audiences. To transmit to audiences by radio or television station. Consistents, people who take part in the contest. Plot, to plan something secretly. To plan to do something, and usually it is secretly. We can say the plot is a summary of a story, but in this context, it means to plot or to plan something secretly. Puzzling, something that is difficult to understand or solve. Inspiring, something important. Broadcast, to transmit to audiences by radio or television station. Prosperous, someone who has had financial success. And version, a variation of an earlier or original thing. Now, since we understood or knew these new vocabulary, we want to answer these questions. Complete the sentences with these words. We have air, contestants, plot, puzzling, broadcast, inspiring, prosperous, and version. Two words that mean to transmit to an audience by radio or television station. These two words are what? Air and broadcast. So it is air and broadcast. To plan something secretly is to do what? To plot. Yes, excellent. And 3. Someone who has had financial success. What's the answer? It is prosperous. Prosperous. Number 4. Something important. What is it? Inspiring. Inspiring. Number 5. People who take part in a contest are called from its name, contest. Contestants. 6. Something that is difficult to understand or solve. We still have puzzling and version. So what do you think the answer? Difficult to understand, it is puzzling. A variation of an earlier or original thing is version. Do you still have anything? We have answered everything now. Time for grammar. We will learn today direct and indirect objects. To and for before indirect objects. A direct object is a noun or pronoun that receives the action of a verb. A direct object answers the question what or who. For example, John wrote the poem John like his new teacher. Now, the poem here is a direct object. John is the subject, wrote is the verb, and the poem is the object. Again, John, subject, likes, verb, his new teacher, object. Here, in these two sentences, this is different sentence. In these two sentences, each sentence has only one object. So we call it direct object, or just we call it object. So this is direct object. Direct object. An indirect object tells us to or for whom the action is done. tell us to or for whom the action is done. For example, there must be a direct object for there to be an indirect object. The first example is John wrote the poem for his mother. John is the subject, wrote verb, the poem object, for his mother, what? Another object. How can it come? How can we say that in the sentence two objects? In fact, the first object we call or we name it or we say that it is direct object. This is direct object. While the second object is indirect object. Now, we said John wrote. What did he wrote? Or what did he write? He wrote the poem. So this is the direct object. John wrote the poem. This is the direct object. For whom? For his mother. So the poem for his mother. This is indirect object. Is that clear? Another example. John read the poem. John is the subject, the one who did the action. Read, verb, the poem, object. He read it for whom or to whom? To the audience. This is another indirect object. So he read or he read the poem to the audience. It's direct and this is the indirect. If there is a preposition, the indirect object goes after the direct object. If there is preposition, the indirect object goes after. Example, she gave the remote control to me. Where is the preposition? It is to here. To is the preposition. It comes after what? The direct object. What is the direct object here? She, subject, gave, verb. The remote control is direct object. So it came after. The preposition came after. This is the preposition came after the direct object. If there is no preposition, the indirect object goes before the direct object. Example, she gave me the remote control. She, subject, gave, verb, me, the remote control. Where is the direct object and the indirect object? She gave the remote control. Remote control is the direct object and she gave it to me. So me is indirect object. Again, if there is no preposition, if we cross the preposition, the indirect object goes before. This indirect goes before the direct object. The indirect object is me and remote control is direct object. It came before. When the direct object is a pronoun like me, the pronoun goes before the indirect object. No. The pronouns goes before the indirect object. Now use to if the indirect object is receiving something. If he is receiving, we use to. Also we use to with these verbs: bring to, confess to, give to, hand to, lend to, offer to, pass to, pay to, promise to, read to, sell to, send to, show to, take to, tell to, and write to. Will you pass a pillow to me? Pass. This is pass. We use to. Note, the preposition to is not used when the indirect object comes before the direct object. So when the indirect comes before the direct, there is no preposition. Like, will you pass me a pillow? Here we removed to. We didn't say, will you pass me, or will you pass a pillow to me? It's wrong. Okay. Also use for if the indirect object is benefiting from some kind of help. If the indirect object is benefiting from some kind of help, use what? For. Use for with these verbs: book, build. So you book a hotel for Ahmed. You build for your brother. You buy a car for your son. You cook food for your brother. You find people for the sailor. You get a pen for your teacher. Keep for, leave for, make for, order, and reserve. All of these words, all of these verbs can be used with for. For example, my parents bought a new TV for me. Bought used for. Note, the preposition for, this preposition is not used when the indirect object comes before the direct object. Example: his parents is the subject, are helping verb. Buying, the verb. Him, this is the indirect object. This is indirect object because they bought what? They bought TV. TV is the direct object, and buying it for him, this is indirect object. Okay, did we use for here? No. So the preposition for is not used when the indirect object comes before. Here we have the indirect comes before the direct. Can we use for inside the sentence? Of course, yes. You can complete the sentence with for. For example, his parents are buying him a new TV for his graduation. Here for is not used with object, so we can complete the sentence using for. So we didn't say that don't use for inside the sentence. No, you can use for, but this is to give the reason. Why did they bought him, or why did they buy him a new TV? Because or for his graduation. But here with objects, direct or indirect, we didn't use for. With some verbs, the indirect object always follows the direct object, and the preposition for, this preposition cannot be omitted. You cannot delete it. You cannot delete for. For example, answer. If we use answer, you cannot omit or delete the preposition for, and the indirect object follows the direct. Answer, catch, change, close, fit, open, prepare, pronounce, and translate. For example, can you please translate the program for me? So, can you, here the subject is you. Can is helping verb. Translate is the verb. The program is what? The program is the direct object, and me is the indirect object. So the indirect followed the direct, and we cannot omit for. Okay, now complete the conversation with for or to. Alex, what happened in last night's episode of Fast and Safe? Omar, I recorded it. You, can you say I recorded it to you or for you? Actually it is for you. It was great. Tell me about it. Well, Alan wrote an email Ahmed. What can you choose here? To or for? Excellent, to Ahmed. In it he confessed him. Confessed what? Confessed to him that he had tampered with the engine of the car he was driving. Ahmed kept reading the email himself. Kept the email reading the email to or for? To himself. He got a fantastic car, Ahmed. He got a fantastic car for Ahmed to drive in this show. He bought a new helmet. He bought a new helmet for him or to him? For him. He even sent a limo Ahmed's house. To or for? To Ahmed's house to drive him to the stadium. What did Ahmed do? Well, he was angry at first. Then he demanded that Alan make a public statement on the air and promised that he would never do anything like that him again. So for him or to him. So by answering this question, we came to the end of our today's lesson. These are the references. Today we listened and discussed types of TV programs like Jeopardy, Hoi, CSI. Also we studied new vocabularies like air, contestants, plot, puzzling, broadcast, inspiring, prosperous version. Then we learned how to use to and for before indirect objects. We said use to if the indirect object is receiving something. Use for if the indirect object is benefiting from some kind of help. Then we practiced direct and indirect objects. We said that a direct object is a noun or pronoun that receives the action of a verb, and indirect object tells us to or for whom the action is done. Thank you for your listening. You can visit our website or contact our Twitter or our phone, this free phone. Thank you again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.